What's up, everybody? I'm in the shop today working on a truck that I'm building to be a new daily for my wife. It was actually her first truck in high school. It's a 1990 GMC Sierra. It's gonna be a pretty fun build. Be a fun little truck to drive. It's not a fresh build. I've been working on it a couple years on and off. We're finally getting to the point where we're starting fuel system, we're starting wiring, starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So today I'm gonna be working on the wiring the fuel pump, trying to get a fuel tank back in the truck. So we've got a really nice Aeromotive drop-in pump set up. It's got a billet top, dual 340 pumps. A couple colors of 12 gauge. Dual pump, so I'm going to set it up. The plan is to run a Haltech standalone ECU and harness. So I'm going to set these pumps up individually so I can run one by itself or both together. Got a Deutsch connector. I think that's how you say that. I don't know, these are pretty sweet. I like the way they seal. The road grime and all the years of abuse, they still come apart pretty easily. We're going to connect the wires to the pump. Come out about, I don't know, 14, maybe 16 inches. We'll put the plug. That way I can put the tank in the truck. And when I get around to doing wiring, the plug's there and all I just got to do is plug into it. So these connectors have pins and sockets. The pins go on the female side of the plug. It's always a good idea, or at least what I like to do is the male plug with the sockets put on your power side, so that would be the truck side. That way, you put this on the truck side, which you can do, but your pins are visible in there, so for whatever reason you had this on the tank unplugged, then your pins are somewhat exposed. Something could get in there and short them out a little bit easier than the other way around. I guess what I need to do is figure out how long we want to make this. It needs to go to the front of the truck. I think we're just going to do 30 inches. I'd rather have too much than not enough. So the Aeromotive pump comes with these nice little rubber boots, ring terminals. Got some heat shrink with the epoxy in it and some split loom wrap that I got from Monkey Fab Garage. So what I like to do is when I'm putting heat shrink on, I like to cut the insulation off these crimp connectors. This is just like doing brake lines. You want to put the boot on first. A little tiny hole, and it's almost impossible to get it on after the fact. Now, this end's open, so you could put it on that way, but it's good practice to put it on first. You don't have to necessarily do heat shrink with these, but I want to. A little extra insurance. Keep the torch away from the tank. There's probably fuel vapor in there. Would not be a good combination. You can see that, but the camera to focus. Guess not. But there's epoxy lined inside of that. So when you heat it up, the epoxy melts and it kind of glues it all together. One extra layer of corrosion resistance. I'm gonna make the red power for the main. I'll do black for the ground. I'm gonna go ahead and isolate the grounds between both pumps. I think that's a better way to do it. Could tie them together, but for future troubleshooting and to alleviate any issues, I would rather have them separate. I've got a 4-plug connector there and really only need 3 wires. So on the cheaper ones, you can usually just grab these and pull them off, but these, if you just come in here and cut that a little bit. They'll just twist out and you're left with just the connector. I'll go ahead and cut a bunch of this heat shrink to size. Rubber boot, heat shrink, and the connector. Make sure they're good and crimped. A lot of people's preference is to solder stuff like this. You can, it's not a bad way to do it. I don't love solder. I'll do it sometimes, but I had some real bad experience with when I used to work for the highway department, working on their trucks and equipment. We used to solder all the connections on our brine spraying equipment for winter weather, and the salt water would just eat through the solder in days. It was nothing but a headache. The chances of this truck or any one of my projects seeing that kind of salt water is probably non-existent, but it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth having to do all that work twice. I think a properly crimped connection is just as good as, if not better, for the type of stuff I do anyways, but that's just my opinion. Everybody's entitled to have their own opinion. Yeah, they make these without the insulation on it, but these come in the kit, so I'm going to use them. Again, none of this is necessarily the right or the only way to do it. It's just the way that I do it. And if you do it a different way, well, that's fine too. Another one of those, everybody's got their own opinions. Just like strapping down a trailer, you want to pull on it and say that's not going anywhere. Otherwise, it probably will go somewhere. It's a great little torch, by the way. Sievert, I guess. Got it at Home Depot. It's got replaceable tips, and I don't know what you want to do. It's pretty neat. The old Burns-O-Matic one fell off the table and snapped one day. Went back to buy another one, and that particular Home Depot didn't have that brand anymore, so settled for the Sievert. About the same price, but actually like it better. I'm by no means sponsored by anybody, so any of these companies I mentioned, I'm just mentioning them because I like them. Don't get nothing out of the deal, not looking to get anything out of the deal. It's just I've had good luck with them and share my experience. Wouldn't mind a deal with Milwaukee though. Love their stuff. Some say it's an addiction. Honestly, I'm not really addicted to the Milwaukee name. I'm just addicted to the color red. Back when I started buying Milwaukee, it was Milwaukee or DeWalt. Milwaukee was a little bit, they weren't a new company, but they were kind of expanding pretty rapidly there about 15 years ago. And getting into the more cordless power tools and all that stuff, or at least maybe I was just young and getting started, and they seemed like they were starting to ramp up. Anyways, I hated the color yellow. Still don't like the color yellow, so I didn't want to buy DeWalt. But again, I have an addiction to the color red, so Milwaukee it was. I mean, even got a Milwaukee coffee cup. Because why not? Alright, so both pump grounds are going to be black. I'm going to write this down before I forget. Black equals ground. White equals auxiliary. Red equals main. This is going to have to go that way. Which means that my wires didn't plan that out very well. My 30 inches of length, they're not all going to match. That's okay. We'll trim them a little bit later. All right, I think we're done with the big wire. Get that out the way. Nope, still gotta have that. So I messed up. Either I bought the wrong connector. I think I had a different plan in my head when I was ordering all this stuff. We got a power and a ground for the... really, it's not a ground. They're both grounds going to the sending unit, but I got the sender wire for the gauge, and we got the chassis ground. I'm going to do them out of 16 gauge, I believe this is. But I did not need to get a 2-pin 16 gauge connector. I don't want to use I have a 12, but I don't want to try to crimp 16 into 12 because it's probably not a good idea. Could use the factory weather pack, but I mean, this truck's a 1990 and I'm about to replace 90% of the wiring, so I don't think that's a good idea either. So I think what we'll do is we'll wire this to the pump. We'll stub it out there. It will be in an accessible location that I can install a plug later as I get one. No. We'll make this like 40 inches long. It's a little more room under the truck. Sure. Don't need that anymore. I'll just use this one as a template. Seems easier than the tape measure. Okay. Let's do orange as the sending unit wire. I guess it doesn't really matter. Like I said, they're both grounds. don't know how a sending unit works, it's got a certain, the gauge and the sending unit little float thing in the tank has a, oh, what's the word, resistance at the match. You have a resistance range from full to empty. And it's basically just a ground signal that fully grounded is full, I believe, and then as that ground resistance slowly goes away, as the thing goes, as the level sensor goes down, it moves the, oh, I forgot the heat shrink. That's okay. As the float goes down, it moves the gauge in the truck. Gotta say though, I really do like this Aeromotive drop-in pump. I was gonna cut up the factory basket, put in a Walbro 450 pump, but then I found this a little bit more expensive in the end, but again, it was 5 minutes to put it in the tank versus having to modify the old one, and plus it's billet and it's anodized black, and it's already got AN fittings on it. I think that's a triple win at the least. Rubber boot. And one more piece of heat to shrink. Heat shrink. Keep doing all this out of different orders, but I guess as long as the end result is the same, right? Not going anywhere. Didn't do that to the last one. Uh-oh. Get a socket and tighten up the nuts. Let's see, it looks about like a 3/8. Got it. Apologies for not showing the inside of this pump setup and how to put that in. I put it in 4 or 5 months ago, kind of before I had the thought of making these videos. I want to try to be as real as possible and not stage all this stuff. I could take it back out and do it again, but not really in the mood to be redoing things and doing them twice. Oh, these little things are be a booger. I don't think that's going to work. So we're going to redo it and do it twice. As much as I don't want to, they're going to have to come out this side. The boots don't fit that well. Nice. I'm going to put some of this heat shrink up there at the top. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Try to get these where they're kind of laid out in the right order. There we go, the red and the black. The neater we can keep the wires, the better end result. You can find the sweet spot. The tool they make just kind of loops in there and pulls it over for you. Do it with your finger, it's just not quite as fast and efficient. But we've only got 30 inches to do, so just deal with it. All right, I'm going to leave that just a little bit long. Would rather throw a half an inch or an inch away than be an inch short. Perfect, got just enough. Plug it in the truck when that time comes. Go ahead and cut all 4 of the big pump wires to the same length. We'll leave these like extra for later. All right, so these are going to get the pins. Make sure you don't strip too much and you got just enough to cover that. And there's a proper crimp. You do need the special crimp to do that, crimp tool. You can do it with these, but I would not recommend it. It's very difficult. You don't get a good long-lasting crimp. You got to automatically stop, bottom out. You just push it in and squeeze. Super easy. Okay, let's do, these have numbers here on the back side. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna do red on, let's do red on one. It's a little orange seal. You can put it on beforehand or you can put it on after. You just push it in there till it clicks. We'll do the second pump power on 4, that way they're a little more spread out. What I don't know is which wire is ground for what pump, but honestly not super worried about that. I just wanted them independent so they can have plenty of ground. Put a number 1 next to this, and then number 4 next to our white. So there you have it. I don't know how well you can see that, but there's little lock tabs in there. You can just pop them over with a screwdriver. They also make a special tool, and you can just pull that pin out if you want to move them around. The next step is to take this, which I can never remember which one goes in there. I think it's the small one. Come on. Need a flathead. That one's not really wanting to lock. Yeah, you can just pop that little tool, little pin, and it comes out. You really need the special tool to get the little orange piece out of there. What the orange piece does is it spreads out the little lock tab so that the pins can't fall out. You just push that down in there until it doesn't really snap, but just push it in there until it seals. What I did forget to do is put another piece of heat shrink right there. Well, we're gonna have to do the old school electrical tape trick for that. Which is fine, I guess. So when you're taping a wire wrap on, you don't want to just wrap around the outside. Pull that back a little bit. I'm going to separate those wires out just a hair. I'm going to wrap this back a couple wraps. And I can put a wrap around those. And if you'll aim your tape where your seam is, you can tape your conduit down. This braided split loom is nice because you can actually poke a hole in it. Run wires out the side. And you're left with something pretty clean. I'm going to put my other plug on it. We'll be set. Heat shrink this. The split loom melts pretty easily, so you don't want to get that too hot. Again, you probably don't want to do this around a gas tank. This hasn't had gas in it in a couple of years, so I've cleaned it out, flushed it out with water. There are no more fumes, but it's still not a safe practice. So do the rest of this how I did it if you want, but I don't recommend the fire near the gas tank. So there we have it. Real nice and clean pigtail on the fuel pump. Put this connector back in the bag so that when I do the wiring harness, we will have that. As long as I can find where I put it by that time. All right, so fuel pump's in. We're ready to put the tank in as soon as I get the filler neck tube. We're 9 weeks from Texas LS Fest. I've already entered the truck. So the plan is in the next 9 weeks, finish it out, get it running and driving. Hopefully done enough to drive up to Texas Motor Speedway. And yes, it is LS swapped. Got to do the engine wiring, the downpipe and exhaust coming out of the turbo. Got to run all the boost lines, oil lines to the turbo, build the drive shaft, fuel hose, plumbing, transmission cooler, and I'm sure a whole lot of other little things that I'm forgetting because the last 10% of these projects always take the longest. 9 weeks isn't a lot of time. There's still a few parts I've got to buy, so we'll see what happens. I'll be videoing more of finishing out the truck. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you enjoy some of the other ones. And thanks for watching.